Well, hey, thanks for tuning in. Welcome back, or if first time watching, we're glad that you're watching this. This is just every week we want to do these, and we want to kind of look back at the sermon that was preached on Sunday, and maybe explore that a little bit more. This past week, we looked at worship and service and the link between the two, and so we kind of wanted to talk about that a little bit. If I had to summarize my sermon in a sentence, I would basically say this is that we become like what we worship. So the thing that we worship, we eventually end up becoming like that, and that's why it's so important when we're talking about worship and service that we emphasize that we're worshiping the right thing.
Yeah, what would be, real quick before we really get too far into it, what would be the detriment of um, of not worship, like of becoming like something that isn't Christ? Like what's the what kind of thing we run into? Because like I like baseball. Uh, I'm not saying that if I play baseball, worship baseball, that I would become a pro baseball player. So like we're not talking like that far, but like what kind of what level of attention to one thing is worship and what level isn't, and how do we find that difference?
Yeah, I think that's good, and because I think you have to distinguish between, like, there are things that we really like, that we really enjoy, that God has given as good gifts, right? And so your love for baseball, um, that's a good thing, right? College basketball, I love college basketball.
Go Jayhawks.
Go Jayhawks! That's right. That's right. We may have just lost
Yeah,
some
sorry,
followers,
sorry.
but I'm just so total side note here, right? But college football season is coming up.
Mm.
I'm a college football fan, and I am a ride or die Jayhawks fan. So that means that I root for Jayhawk football, and I'm kind of like the last couple of years I've been really excited. I'm like, hey, all right, we're gonna do it this year, and then I get let down every year. But I'm excited for this year too. So KU basketball, KU football, college basketball, right? I get excited for those. But I think you ask a valid question, like at what point does it um, rise to a level of worship? And I think there's a whole bunch of things that we could use to distinguish. But I think one of the questions that I would ask myself is, I would ask, like, um, okay, if this thing ended tomorrow and it was never in my life ever again, would I be okay with that? Um, that to me, that's not the end all be all question, but it's one of the things that starts to reveal to me, okay, is this just something I really enjoy, or has it risen to a level of worshiping? Um, that's one of the questions that I would ask. I mean, what would you say on that?
I mean, you talked about the prep for a football game, or it's almost football season for college and for the NFL. And you were talking about like if you're a fan of the sport and you take the whole week to prepare for this game that you're going to on Saturday, and the anticipation is high, that you're talking to everyone about it, you're checking stats, you're figuring out like what cool things am I going to watch for. Maybe you're painting your face, like there's like some legitimate, purposeful action towards this thing that you're going to go attend, and it's football, like it's just football. And then you compared that to, I don't know that you said this, but like none of us do that for a church service, right? I mean, you and I do it, but like I don't know that the average person is anticipating Sunday church so much that they're painting their face before they go to it. That's a extreme example, but the anticipation, the talking to your friends about it, the you know everything in your week is building up to this point. Is that the line? Is that where it's like, not to call anybody out that does go to football games or wear face paint or any of those things, but maybe it's the level of of attention and adoration that you give to a thing. Well, like for example, I guess a couple years ago, Um, I had to stop watching. I think it was baseball. I love baseball. I had to stop watching baseball because the way that my team would perform, go Cardinals, the way they would perform would sometimes indicate my like attitude after the fact. And it was like, man, you're getting really worked up about these guys that don't even know you. You've never met them, they've never met you, and like they lose and you're like down in the dumps, or they win and like you're living on life. And it's like I decided to take a step back, and it was revealed to me through that some self-reflection and other things that I was putting too much into it, too much at stake and those kind of things. And so um, I think that's where I draw the line a little bit. Like if I'm into it enough that it's influencing my behavior and my actions and my attitude, and the way that I treat people, the way that I talk to my wife, then I'm probably too far into it and need to take a step back. Because I mean, we can call it worship, we can call it, well, yeah, I mean, I think last week we talked about idolatry, and idols are dangerous. God talks about it, Jesus talks about it. Yeah, I think it's important to recognize what they are before we really get into.
And I think that's an important distinction. And I think I think one of the things that's revealed in this is that there's sometimes not like a um, just blanket like, oh, here's a B and C, how you identify what's the idol in your
Yeah,
life,
right.
right? Like, because there are certain people, I mean, like I think about, we have people in our church family or, connections to our church family who are Christians who have also devoted a serious amount of time to athletics.
Hmm.
And because of that, they have ended up going on and competing at a collegiate level, right? I would not say that they are guilty of idolatry because they committed so much time to this, right? Now, would the temptation be there? Of course there would. But I think you have to look at something deeper of where is their heart. And I think about one or two in particular that I've had conversations with where I'm confident that, like, if they blow out a knee or they do whatever, like, that's going to be disappointing to them, but it's not going to shatter their life and send them into this spiral because their foundation is built on something else. So I think time can be a good indicator, um, but not just time alone, right? We have to look at kind of look at this holistically, and I think that when we talk about idols, because we were kind of talking about idols a little bit, idols can be anything, really. I think, like, when we read scripture and we see examples, we a lot of times idols are statues. Um, Idols aren't always statues. Idols can be anything that becomes um, takes the place of God and where He alone should be inhabiting. I think about, I didn't mention this on Sunday during my sermon, but Psalm 115. It says, their idols are merely things of gold and silver shaped by human hands. They have mouths but cannot speak, eyes but cannot see. They have ears but cannot hear, and noses but cannot smell. They have hands but cannot feel, and feet but cannot walk, and throats that cannot make a sound. And those who make idols are just like them, as are all who trust in them. Right? So we become like the thing that we worship. They have eyes, but they can't see. They blind us to something. I think idols, not literal statues, but the idols that we all have in our lives, they blind us from seeing what's truly there. I mean, what would you say are some, like, modern idols that you see from your perspective that you think like, man, like this is something that we really have to be careful and watch out
Mm.
for?
Yeah, so I already kind of picked on sports a little bit. I think that those are kind of the easy, kind of low hanging fruit. They can have a tendency to wrap up everything that we say, do, behave, watch at this point, pay money, gamble on all the things that sports involve today. Some have called it the modern day Roman Colosseum, just
Mm.
like it has our attention. And I think sometimes the point is for it to have our attention, but that's a different conversation. So I'd say sports. I think another one is work can become an idol. We have a tendency to have this thing, and maybe the idol of it is the pursuit of money and resources more than the job that you're working. But I think that if the job you're working is more important than the things around people around you, and it's like that's the mean. If it's just a means to an end, I think it's okay. But I think if it becomes something that wraps up all of your time, if you're not that like church is the end all be all, but if you're working and not going to church, or you're working and not being with your family, or you're working like not reading scripture, I think that there's a thing there where you might be idolizing your work. You go ahead.
So can I
Yeah,
give you a
yeah, yeah.
potential
Push
pushback
back.
on that,
Yeah.
right? And I want to know how you would respond to this, because so here's the pushback. It's like, yeah, I hear what you're saying, Luke, but like I'm busy. Like I've got a lot, and there's a lot of responsibility that falls on me. And
Mm.
like if I don't do it, then it's not gonna get done, right?
Well,
How do you?
Jesus would respond, look at the birds and the flowers that God clothes and God colors and takes care of. How much more will He take care of you? I think that maybe the idol is money, maybe the idol is independence and individualism. Like I can take care of myself, I can handle myself, I can do the things that I need to do. I don't need anyone else to take care of me and do these things for me. And God's like, well, you don't have to. Like I can do it for you. I can take care of things for you. Just trust me, that kind of thing. So that's my little bit of pushback. And I think on the other end of it, like Jesus, though it's a tendency to look at him and be like, well, he was God, so he could teach and work and walk and all. I mean, he was a working man. He was a carpenter. He walked all the time. He worked all the time. He was busy. I mean, he was jumping from town to town. Have you read Mark? Mark like doesn't breathe when he wrote his gospel because Jesus was just doing so much stuff. Um, but he still found time to. Sorry, I'm plugging my sermon a little bit. He still found time to draw away and to remind himself why he was doing it, what he was doing. And I think I'm not saying don't work hard, don't provide for your family, don't. I'm not saying any of that stuff. I'm just saying if the purpose of going to work is if that's what identifies you, that I'm a working man and that's what I do, or a working woman, that's just what I do, and that's who I am, and that's how you know me, that's what you see me, is what you talk about. Like there's so much more, and Jesus is that more, and I think that's what we need to pursue. And is there one that you have that would come to mind?
I mean, I think one that is always on the forefront of my mind is family,
Mm.
um, which is I think illustrates how idols can be good things that are turned into God things. So family is good and it's given by God. Um, Children are a blessing, the Bible would say. They're a good thing, but children make really terrible gods. And I think sometimes in our culture, in our society, we have a tendency to elevate children to this to the point where it becomes godlike status, like, oh, whatever they say, whatever they do, right? Like we've got to do this, and ties in with the sports thing, right? That like sometimes we live vicariously through our children. Um, I think about like if you're married, um, I love my wife. I want my relationship with her to deepen and to grow and to be nurtured and all these things. Um, Sometimes I hear the phrase like, "Oh, my spouse completes me," or whatever. And I'm like, I don't know that your spouse should complete you. Like, I think Jesus should be the one that does that. God should be the one that fills this void that no one else can. And I think sometimes we look to our spouse, our significant other, to fill that when we shouldn't. So I think that relationship, I think relationship with kids, like that has a potential to be placed ahead of God and become this idol. I
I was gonna say you bring up I like the point there. It makes me think of maybe we just can find. I mean, I think that I probably have some idols that I don't actually know that I have. The things that do influence and affect my attitude and behavior without me knowing it. Um, but I think there, like, we can discover what idols that we have, or if something that we think that we just really like that actually could be an idol. I think we can discover those things by determining if they are filling that space that Jesus is supposed to fill. And I think there are outside indicators that, red flags, warning lights, those kind of things that pop up that maybe we've just trained ourselves to ignore that are saying, like, no, no, this thing that you're placing in the place of Jesus, that, you're agitated, you're annoyed, you're stressed, you're anxious, or whatever the thing is, or more than one thing. And Christ is like trying to, the Spirit is stirring you to say, like, this thing's an idol, man. Like knock it off, because this is why you have a short temper. This is why you're anxious, or this is why you feel like you're just stuck, and it's because you're not filling yourself with Christ. You're filling yourself with football, or you're filling yourself with your spouse, or you're filling yourself with just a 9 to 5 that turns into a 9 to 9, or something else that just and it. I don't think it's an accident that the spirit is known as a breath sometimes, and
mm,
we're reminded to it's the breath of God, and He wants to fill us with good fresh air, and remind us to breathe and be with Him, and be like Jesus, fruit of the Spirit, all those things that I would love to have characterize me 24/7. Just living and breathing the Spirit and the Spirit of Christ, and um, yeah. So that's kind of where my attention was drawn to when you're talking about that. So
and I think it's interesting how, like, all of these, as we've gone this whole summer and we've talked about all these different spiritual practices, it's kind of like every time we talk about one, my mind is, I think, and especially like in these discussions, is immediately drawn to another one, right? So when we're talking about worship and um, we become like what we worship, so we need to be careful of what we worship. My mind is immediately drawn to things like silence and solitude, because we need to be listening and discerning, listening for how the Spirit's speaking and leading. When we talk about um, things like worship, and my mind is drawn, like it was in the sermon, my mind is drawn to service. Originally the sermon was supposed to be about the spiritual discipline of service, and then as I started reading and studying, I was like, man, like I can't talk about service without talking about worship as well. Like the two go together, because God is a God of service, and we don't just serve Him on our own, out of our own strength. We are fueled by the Spirit, and we're fueled by um, the ways that He guides us and directs us, and we can only do that if our worship is directed toward Him.
makes me think of, like, the phrase "imago Dei," the image of God.
Mm-hmm.
How does that play into this subject of service and worship? I mean, I can, like, maybe reason out a little bit, but as we're pursuing being like Jesus, we recognize that we are like Jesus in that pursuit. Like, how does that feed into service and feed into even this whole series and everything like that?
Yeah, so I'd say, like, Genesis 1, God creates. He creates all of these things. He says that one thing is created in His image, right? It's humanity. It's man and woman created in His image. Uh, we see in Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 that they are with God. They are united with God. They're connected with Him, and they are. Um, there's that line at the end of Genesis 2 that says they're naked and they feel no shame, right? I don't know that it's really, I mean, it's about the nakedness, but it's about something deeper than that. It's about transparency. It's about, this unity that they have, that like this is not a barrier. Um, so you have that. Then you have Genesis 3, where you have sin enters the picture. There's now this disunity, and so it's not like we are suddenly. It's not like God goes, okay, you were created in my image, but I'm taking my image back now, right? And you're just like an animal. Um, like we still have that. Like human beings still have that imprint on them, but we have it's been fractured. I always like how I had a professor in seminary who said the image of God is in humanity is defaced, but it's not erased,
Mm.
right? So it's kind of this idea when we talk about if you take like a big theological concept like depravity, right? Is what we're not saying is we're not saying you're as evil as you could possibly be and you're just a horrible wretched person. It's saying that without some external force, be it God, there's no way that you are going to live up to this standard. And so the image is still there, but it's like it's like this is an imperfect example, but it's like a $20 bill that has been um, covered in mud and ripped and torn and all this sort of stuff. It still has value. It still has worth, but it's hard to see that. And so for us, because of that, it leads to all sorts of different things, and we could have a whole discussion on sin and all that. But so the image of God is still there, and you read passages like in Acts where it talks about how the Holy Spirit comes upon people and lives inside and dwells inside people, right? Um, why is that able to happen? Well, number one, because of the sacrifice of Jesus on the cross and all this sort of stuff. But number two is because like we are created in the image of God. And so because of that, the Spirit is able to come and renew these things. And I think about like Romans 12, that this whole thing between we are we are either being conformed into the image of um, the patterns of the world and all these sorts of things, furthering this whole like, yeah, you have the image of God, but you are going a different direction, or you're being transformed um, by Jesus, by the Spirit, and your mind is being renewed. And so it's like this person that you are, this creation that you are, is being transformed, the image of God inside you. God is through the Holy Spirit uh, working and developing and shaping you to more fully display that image to the world through Him and through His power. That was a really long answer, I
Okay,
felt like.
okay, yeah,
But I mean, did that kind of get it?
yeah,
Like the
absolutely,
question you were talking
absolutely,
about?
yeah. I mean, I think that recognizing this kind of not marred image, because the image of God is pure and holy and is in us. Like I like the present, it's like a coin or a dollar that's covered in mud, and you can't really see exactly what it is, but you know that it's valuable. Um, yeah, I mean, I love that because absolutely we are valuable, and absolutely God cherishes us. I had a professor, and I think it was a couple semesters ago actually, that talked about how in creation God created a lot of amazing, awesome things, and then he created man, and man was the first one to turn their face back to God. So it was just like,
Mm.
because we have him in us, like we have that the image of him, and we have the ability to seek him and seek his face, and there's a relationship there, and there's a connection there, and so yeah, and that connection was broken. We have a reflection of God in us, and we actually in the Gospels have a display of service of like the utmost capacity, and you talked about that on Sunday. Like, what's the biggest impact of Christ getting down on his hands and knees and washing his disciples' feet? Like, yeah, they had nasty feet, but I think it was more about, or you can tell us, what was it more about than just some dirty feet?
Yeah, I mean, I think that when Jesus did that, right, and we're talking about, just kind of for context, we're talking
Okay.
about this time when he's with his disciples. Shortly before he goes to the cross, they meet together. Um, this would be during a time when a lot of things happen. He's even right before going to the cross, he's still kind of teaching them, and he takes up a towel and a basin, and he begins to wash their feet, which would have been a job that a servant would have done, right? It's a lowly job. It's nasty. It's gross. Um, he did this because he's showing something about himself. He's showing something about who he is. He's showing he is a God that serves. It's the whole. I mean, if you go even bigger picture than this, you think about, what did Jesus do? So many other religions say, come up the mountain to meet God. Christianity says Jesus came down the mountain to take us up the mountain to God. And so Jesus is saying, not only, hey, this is why I've come, is to serve you, but then he's saying, because I have served you, you then reflect my character, God's character, by going and serving others. Yeah, I think it blows every excuse out of the water, right? Because it's like, well, I don't know if they're deserving of service. I don't know if I can really serve them, right? Think about whose feet Jesus washed. He washes the feet of the one who betrays him. I mean, like,
And he knew, and
and
it
he
wasn't
knew.
it wasn't
He
like
knew.
a yeah.
It wasn't like he got to the end and he's like, "Oh man, I didn't see that coming." Right? Like he knows.
Well, even then, I think he washed the feet of all of those men that walked away from him, and Peter denied him 3 times, and the others fled. Thomas doubted, like all these men that
Yeah.
had walked and talked with him, and
Part of worship, and this is the link that I hope I was making in my sermon on Sunday. Part of what it looks like to worship is to serve, is to serve others, um, serve others selflessly. Not with, well, this is how it benefits me, but putting the needs. It's that Philippians 2, putting the needs of others before our own, as Christ did for us. One of the things, and this is kind of a question, I guess. One of the things that I explored a little bit in the sermon on Sunday, but I didn't unpack it a great deal, was like worship beyond Sunday, like what that looks like in a really practical sense. And I think I gave a few little things, but I didn't really talk about that. I think that's kind of to kind of wrap all this up today. Um, Kind of what I want to talk about, because I think, okay, if you've like made it through this conversation and you heard us talking about worship and all this sort of stuff, it's one of those, like, it's a great kind of theory, big picture level, but it's like, let's bring this back down, like, life. How does this actually impact them? So what are some, would you say, are some really practical ways that we can worship, you know, those other hours, other than just that hour and a half that we meet together on a Sunday as the body of Christ.
Yeah, so I don't know if it was something you said on Sunday, maybe you said it in Sunday school, but you talked about how like it's like seeing the needs of those around you. And it made me think of this movie I watched when I was a kid, Meet the Robinsons, that the motto of the dad was see a need, fill a need. And honestly, like it's not the gospel. It's a Disney movie, so it's not even maybe that like theologically accurate. But I think there's some truth there a little bit where I think just looking around you and seeing where there are needs, and even if they're small ones, they could be big ones. I went to Joplin last week, and it was before your sermon, and maybe the Spirit was kind of prepping me for your sermon. I'm not sure, but I was in Target, and this mom was like carrying. I know she's a mom because of the story a little bit later, but she's like holding all of this stuff, and she doesn't have a cart, and so she calls someone that's not at the store and says, "Can you come to this store and bring me a cart to the back of the store because I have too much to carry?" And I don't know the whole story, and the person was like, "Oh, I can't. I gotta go to work, whatever." And so I was like, I don't know her. I don't want to talk to her. Like, I'm just here to get my little bag of sunflower seeds and then like dash out. And the Spirit was like, no, you need to go get her a cart. And so I like after she hung up, I was like, yeah, I'll go get you a cart. She's like, oh no, don't worry about it. I don't need it that bad. As she's like about to drop all of the groceries she's carrying.
And as she had made a phone
As
call
she made
to
a phone call,
somebody
yeah,
who
yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
at the
yeah,
store.
yeah. Which, part of me is like, that's a terrible picture of our society where even an offer from a stranger is cast aside so fast because of individualism and independency and that kind of stuff. But anyways, and she was like, "No, I don't need one." And I was like, "Well, at least like let me help you carry the stuff to the front." And she's like, "Do you have time for that?" Like I was like, "I have a bag of sunflower seeds in my hand." She's like, "Are you headed that way?" I was like, "Even if I'm not, like it's fine." Anyway, so I helped her, and um, she felt really embarrassed and all kinds of things. And that wasn't my intent. And so as we walked, she was like something about, I hope my son feels bad for not bringing the cart faster or whatever. I think that was the thing she was waiting on. I was like, absolutely not. Like, I am just doing this because this is what you need. And I didn't preach the gospel to her right there or anything, but wanted to encourage her and encourage her son when we eventually found him and put the groceries in the cart. But it was just a reminder of like, man, we could get so tunnel visioned and driven by the things that we need, the things that we do, that we just forget that there are just people around us that just have needs, even if they're not in pain or hurting or anything, but they just have needs. And very briefly, is I don't like doing dishes. I Our first house we didn't have a dishwasher, and so I did everything by hand. And since then, I really have not enjoyed doing dishes. And I've been reading Brother Lawrence, who was a monk in the 17th century who didn't like cooking, and that was his job. And he learned how to worship God through his cooking, and then he started to enjoy it. And so this week, especially, I've it's only Tuesday, but yesterday I jumped at the opportunity to help out my wife and do some things in the kitchen, and she was like, "This is kind of weird." And I was like, it's okay if it's weird. Like I'm enjoying this because it's serving you, and through that I'm worshiping. And she was like, "You're still being kind of weird." I was like, "It's okay. Like this hopefully will become the norm that the things that I don't want to do, I start to do and enjoy doing them because I'm serving someone else, which then is serving the Lord." And so, yeah, we see people in need all the time. And even if we're not in Hume, and even if we don't know them, and people need a display of the gospel in action more than just in words. And I think that we have a wonderful opportunity to serve the people around us and really give them a glimpse of who Jesus is. So, yeah.
But and I think as you kind of told all those stories, I was thinking two things. How sad is it the bar is set so incredibly low that the helping someone carry an armful of groceries would be viewed as like, this is incredible and I can't believe you're doing this. Here's what I think it illustrates. This service thing is super easy. Like, it doesn't have to be complicated. Um,
Of all of the spiritual practices that we talked about this summer, it might be the easiest
it
one.
might
Yeah,
be, it
yeah.
might be, right? Because the bar is so incredibly low. So it's like all you gotta do is just pay attention, right?
Yeah, take the tunnel vision goggles off and just start seeing people around you and yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
So, yeah, I mean with service and then just in general, I'm thinking about like worship. How do we do this throughout the week? Um, One of the things I would kind of encourage is, we talked about idols at the beginning. So maybe spend some time, and I would encourage people to spend some time and try to identify some areas where either they would go, okay, yeah, like I have a full blown idol on my hands here, or maybe it's not places where they have a full blown idol, but it's just they haven't surrendered something fully, or they're still holding on to something, or things like that. I haven't presented my body as a living sacrifice in this sort of area. And then just identify like super simple things that you can do. Like I think about social media is such an easy one to pick on, right? But first one that comes to mind, social media. You're like, man, like I devote way too much of my time to social media. How do I redirect that to, a time where I am focused on God? Well, maybe that means deleting an app and downloading a Bible app, and every time you grab your phone, you're training yourself to instead open up the Bible app. I that's one to me that feels like low hanging fruit. That's really easy, but just finding those places where you can not necessarily even, because that's the thing with all these spiritual disciplines. I feel like people could hear these and think, oh, we're saying you need to do more and more and more, just add more and more and more. It's like, no, that's not what we're saying. What we're saying is take the things that you're doing and either reframe how you're doing them, or eliminate the things that you don't need to be doing and replace them with the things that you should be doing. So that would be another example.
So talking about like worship and the simplicity of it and service and everything, how it's wrapped up. What's a simple practical challenge that we can give to those listening and offer for them to take the next step towards something greater than just listening to a podcast?
Yeah, I think the goal is to reframe the way we think about worship and service, and maybe to expand on that even a little more. Not just like we try better, but like allow the Spirit to reframe how we think about it, right? So this week kind of go along with the whole like service and worship, and I'm thinking about Jesus taking up a towel and washing his disciples' feet, you talking about these different encounters that you had with people. I think what I would say is have it as a continuous prayer that you have of, okay, God, show me, direct me to the ways and the people that you want me to serve. And I think as you illustrated with your stories, like a lot of times they just end up being super simple things. They're not complicated. They're not hard. You're saying of all the spiritual disciplines we've talked about, maybe this would be the easiest one, right? Just serve in these little ways, be faithful in these little ways. Because I think as we do that, then things grow. It's kind of like your comfort zone, right? Like if you step out and do something outside your comfort zone, you do that enough times, and eventually your comfort zone grows, and that's now a comfortable thing to do. I think it's the same way with service, as you talked about not liking dishes, and then you reframe how you do that, and now you're like, it's actually kind of enjoyable, right? I'll call you next time we have dishes to do. And so maybe if you're a person who, this would be part of the challenge, if you're a person who needs something like tactile, it may not involve washing people's feet literally, but if we're thinking about the metaphor of Jesus and taking up the towel, every time you touch a towel, hopefully when hopefully you're
Hopefully
washing
it's
your
often,
hands
yeah.
enough
It's often.
that a towel is, or if you're using an air dryer,
Yeah.
right? We should say that too.
Or a shop towel,
Or a
or a
shop
paper
towel, a
towel,
paper towel, whatever it may be, dish towel. Every time you touch a towel, like let that be your reminder of God. How can you how can I have eyes like you have? How can I serve like you serve? how can I be your hands and your feet today?
Yeah, that's good. I think that's a good way to really frame it for people. Well, overall, I mean, I enjoyed hearing the sermon and learning a little bit more about worship and maybe having my toes stepped on a little bit
Mm.
here and there. But yeah, well, thank you for tuning in and for listening, and I hope that you were able to take away something fruitful from this and share it with somebody else that you know, maybe that's your act of service, that you share this video with somebody else and encourage them. And but yeah, thanks for listening, and just tune in next time.